everyone, welcome to Everyday Champions. My name is Beck and we are a global family online serving local people in the name of Jesus. And we're glad that you have joined with us wherever you're watching from. If you're watching from one of our homes, maybe give the person next to you a high five, a fist bump, a hug, whatever you need to do to let them know that you are glad that you are with them today. And if you're watching online, if you're watching live, you can jump over to our live chat. Come and say hey in the chat, put a few emojis, let us know where you're watching from. Wherever you're watching this back, however you're here, we're glad that you've joined with us because it's all about community and being together. And so we're glad that we're all together as an Everyday Champions family. And if it's your first time, maybe you're in one of our homes for the first time or you're online for the first time, we're glad that you have joined with us today. You're very, very welcome. We're going to be carrying on with the Church I See series very, very shortly. Gareth is going to be bringing a conversation, so get prepared to listen to that and engage in that in a moment. But just a quick notice is that next Sunday, the 1st of September, is going to be a social Sunday. We're going to not have a broadcast here on our YouTube channel. We want you to go and connect with people. We want you to go and find community, go and do something together, go and have a picnic in a park, go for a day out somewhere, meet with people, go and have a coffee. Loads of different suggestions. Do something with community next Sunday. There will not be a broadcast, but we want you to enjoy spending time with community. So that's next week. But we're going to go straight into our conversation with Gareth. So make sure you've got your devices ready, notepads ready, be ready to engage in the questions. Here we go.
Welcome to another conversation here at Everyday Champions. It's summertime, and that means that yes, we have holidays, yes, we have breaks, time to relax, but not time to stop our conversations that are about transformation. We keep on going, and of course, we are in a season right now of unpacking our Church That We See document. You can see on the screen right now the link where you can go and download this, and we're going to continue to unpack this. And of course, last week we started to look at how do we measure how our church, the church, which is the people, is growing. How do we measure that? What does a healthy disciple look like? Because let's face it, that's what it's all about. So we're going to carry on with that. We're going to look at the second area that we are going to measure, that we are going to make sure that we are investing time, effort, and energy in our circles to really equip you in this key area. And we're looking at 5 in total. And so last week we looked at engaging in personal mission, and this week we are looking at encouraging others through gifts. And I want to ask you a question, okay? And this is our first discussion question. So get thinking about how you might answer this with those that you're watching with. If you're online and you're in the chat column, join in. It's all part of the online and in-person experience. But the question that we're going to be asking is this: what is the most surprising question that someone has ever asked you? What's the most surprising question that someone has ever asked you? Now, before we discuss that together, because this is linked to this area that we're going to be measuring as far as a healthy disciple, the most strange question, which I guess to me is strange, but maybe to you, you're like, yeah, I can totally see why somebody would ask that. It was when I was asked if I was Leanne's dad. Yes, can you believe it? I was asked if I was Leanne's dad. For those of you who don't know, Leanne is my wife. She is all but kind of 10 months younger than me. So yes, she is younger, but surely not so much that you would knock 2 decades off her or add 2 decades onto me. I mean, she loves the fact that somebody asked that question. And do you know what? It's not just been once, multiple times. I have been mistaken for having 3 daughters. Yes, I know I actually only have 2, but when they see me with Leanne, they think it's 3. I mean, I'm just ready to retire right now. I just feel like, well, if that's what you think, I'm going to retire. Do you know what I'm looking forward to most about retirement? Getting up early at 6 o'clock in the morning and driving around really slow while everybody else is in a hurry and they are getting annoyed with how slow I'm driving. Well, that's already happening. I'm being told I'm driving too slow already. So, hey, maybe there's more to it than just the fact that I look older than Leanne. Maybe even my behaviors are starting to follow suit. Well, that's a crazy question, in my opinion, that I've been asked. I want you to discuss right now, what is the most surprising question someone has ever asked you? And they asked you, it just kind of made you think, well, why are you asking that? Or maybe it made you think, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Whatever it is. Okay, I want you to discuss this and then we'll be back. Brilliant. I can't wait to hear all of your funny questions that you have been asked. How many of yours related to age? Raise your hand right now or put in the chat column, that was me. Okay, how many of you were thought to be older than actually you are? Come on, give me some sympathy. Don't leave me hanging as if I'm the only person who looks like 30 years older than they really are. Well, listen, at Everyday Champions, of course, we are about building communities. Our circles, for those who are watching right now who don't know about Everyday Champions, our church are made up of our coaching circles, which meet weekday, weekend, online, in person, bit of both. And they meet in different locations and places in the country, currently UK, but at some point abroad as well. And the whole point of these communities is to foster transformative conversations. It's to have conversations that empower every person of every age. I mean, in our circle, me and Liam, on our weekend circle, we have got young people. In fact, again, it comes back to age. Just in our circle last weekend, I realized it was probably the first time ever that I was the oldest person that was in the room. We've got a number of 16-year-olds, and I just really felt really, really old. I don't think I've ever been in that situation where I've been the oldest person in a room when I've asked that question. But what I love is that our conversations are absolutely relevant to all ages, all backgrounds, all experiences. And the idea is to have transformative conversations that empower each of us to start to bring change into the spheres that we operate each day, whether that's the sphere of education because we're in school or university, whether that's the sphere of business because we run a business or we're employed by a business, whether that's the sphere of healthcare, government, media, arts, sport, entertainment. Whatever the sphere that you spend the most amount of your time and energy is the sphere that you are called to impact, to bring heaven to earth. And our circles are about equipping you to bring that change, and not just a change where we suddenly think, well, it feels like something good is happening. It's not just change where we want people to almost say, oh, it's just nicer that you are around because you're a Christian. And that's nice change, but I'm interested in measurable change. Change that becomes a clear story that reflects his glory. Change where we can say, do you know what, when this person started here, we used to have this problem. Let's say, for instance, I don't know, you might be a teacher in a classroom. We used to have this level of behavior problems, and there's a measurement to that. And now it's been reduced by 20%, 30%. Why? Because what you carry is bringing transformative change. I just want to see measurable change because I just think it makes the story so much more impactful. People can't argue with that kind of change. And so that's what we're dedicating our time, our effort, and our resource into, building communities that deliver that change. But it starts with these conversations that we're having. You see, the quality of our conversations comes down to the quality of the questions that we're asking and the willingness of each of us to be open and honest with our answers. And what I want to talk about in today's conversation is this. One of the most intimate acts of worship that I think the New Testament and the Gospels bring to us is in Matthew 16. And it's linked to a question. And sometimes we don't think about worship being connected to questions. But I hope through today's conversation that you're going to realize that actually the way that we can worship together and the way that we will worship together and have been worshiping together is linked to the quality of our questions and our willingness to give answers. I'll explain what I mean now. Let's go to that passage. It's Matthew chapter 16, and it's from verse 13. This is what we read. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." So let's just stop there. Jesus is engaging with his disciples. How? Through asking questions and receiving answers. Remember, the disciples, a small group of 12 people, essentially like a circle, were constantly engaged throughout the 3.5 years in this question and answering between the rabbi, Jesus, and the followers, the disciples. And it was that back and forth of conversation, as well as seeing demonstrated before them what we can do as citizens of the kingdom, as they looked at Jesus and the disciples then followed his example. That's where the transformation happened in them. And then, of course, when Jesus ascended after the resurrection, transformation came through them as they led a momentum of change through the early church. But this next part of this passage is where I think we find one of the most intimate, sacred moments of worship. Because the disciples, we don't have records of them necessarily kind of having a guitar and singing and, corporate times of worship like that. But they had moments of intimacy where through questions and answers, the presence of God was being manifest. So let's read the next part. So Jesus said, some say John the Baptist, or the disciples said, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And then Jesus said, but what about you? He asked, who do you say I am? You see, it takes an incredible amount of security for a person to ask that kind of a question. That kind of a question, I think, would have almost shocked the disciples. Because remember, this isn't the first time they've met Jesus. They've spent a lot of time with him. They've spent a lot of life with Jesus. So for him to then say, who do you say I am? Would have been one of those questions that, just like we talked about, they were taken back with. But Jesus, being fully secure in who he was, servant leader, servant king, Son of God, fully God yet fully man, he has the security to eyeball the disciples and to eyeball Simon Peter and to say, who do you say that I am? See, sometimes we don't ask those kinds of questions or questions that are that personal because maybe we're afraid of the answers that we're going to get. Maybe we fear what somebody might think because we've asked that kind of a question. But Jesus had the security in who he was to ask, who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Wow. I mean, we've probably read that multiple times before. But what I want you to catch here and almost imagine was the atmosphere in this conversation. When Jesus asked, who do you say that I am, Peter? There's a way that somebody has used previously. I don't know who came up with it. I don't think anybody can necessarily claim it because it's been used multiple times. But I love the way that somebody explains intimacy. They break it down into intimacy meaning into me see. Into me see. And Jesus, as he eyeballs Simon Peter, he creates intimacy because of the question that he's asking. Who do you say that I am? He's literally looking at Simon Peter and he's saying, into me see. And say what you see. Say what you see. Because Jesus wanted to hear not just the opinions of those that they had been listening to. He didn't want to just hear reports that had been reflected back to the disciples. He wanted to know from Simon Peter, when you look at me, Simon Peter, who do you see? As you look into my eyes, you see, questions create intimacy for worship. Remember, worship is giving worth to something or to someone because of time, attention, and energy and focus that is given to it. And so in that moment, Simon Peter is giving his time, energy, attention, and focus to Jesus. And his answer, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You're the Messiah. He is giving worth through his answer to that question. You see, questions create intimacy for worship. And so as disciples and in our circles, in creating these communities, the quality of our worship is going to be down to the quality of the questions and our willingness to engage with those questions. As we look to one another and say, into me, see. Into me, see. You see, that's what makes an environment a sacred environment. When actually we move from simply the small talk and the pleasantries and the surface elements of when people come together. And actually we say, well, no, we're more than just a coming together of a few people for a chat. No, this is an environment where God dwells, where 2 or 3 are gathered together. There he is. Why? Because there's intimacy. So questions create intimacy for worship. And that's what that question, who do you say that I am? The second thing is that questions initiate worship. Questions initiate worship. So Simon Peter's answer, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. It invites people to increase the level of worth that they're giving to God. The more that we interact in our questions and the more that we contribute and have that willingness to have security in who I am and not be worried about what's everybody going to think if I am truly honest about what's going on in my life right now. You know, what are people going to think if I give this answer? No. There is a safe space. There is a place where you and I can be vulnerable. And that is the community that we have to create. Because that's not only the community that we have to create for us as believers, but that's the community that we are then equipped to go and cultivate in the world, in our sphere. We want to be people who then go and ask questions that create sacred moments with other people. And other people are asking us questions, and suddenly we're able to from that moment of intimacy with others, where people are opening up, we are able to share who Jesus is and what he means to us and what he's done for us. You see, that's why we do this in our communities. It is not just so that we get to enjoy it, but it is preparation to become the best asker of questions and to become open books before people so people can truly understand what is going on in our lives. And then the third thing is that questions lead to answers that ignite faith. Verse 17, it says this, Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. This was not revealed to you by flesh and blood." So notice, this was not a something that you were convinced of intellectually or even physically. This was something that happened spiritually. And that's what we've got to understand, is that our conversations, first and foremost, are spiritual. Words are spiritual. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. The heart is where our spirit resides, and our mouth is the gateway to our heart. So our conversations are spiritual. Now that's a challenge, because that asks the question, well, are my conversations having a positive spiritual impact or a negative spiritual impact? Words are powerful. They have a creative force. And so this is where, ultimately questions and answers are powerful tools that can be used in a manipulative way, in a destructive way, but also in a constructive and a powerful way. But here we have a question that led to an answer that ignited faith, because Jesus then goes on to say, because of Peter's response of declaring the lordship of Jesus, he said, I'm going to give you the keys of the kingdom. This is now going to unlock a new level of your assignment. It ignited faith. So, hey, this is what we're going to do, because I want this to be teaching, but also equipping. I want this to be fully interactive. And so our second interaction, we are quite literally going to put ourselves in Simon Peter's shoes or sandals. And we're going to answer this question together. Imagine Jesus right now speaking to you. And we're going to take Simon Peter's name out of that verse, and we're going to answer the question based upon what Jesus says. Jesus says to you, I want to know about you, Gareth. I want to know about you, Leanne. I want to know about you, John. I want to know about you, Reuben. I want to know about you. Who do you say that I am? So I want you to answer that question. If you're online, I want you to answer that question. If Jesus is saying, I want to know about you, put your name there. Who do you say that I am? What response would you give in that moment of intimacy? And of course, it's not just a theoretical idea, because right now, God is with us. And he is asking that question. Who do you say that my son Jesus is? Start to discuss this. Make sure everybody has the opportunity to answer. And of course, your answer is your answer. Everybody can own their own answer. But please, let's allow a moment of intimacy to start to be cultivated. We'll be back in a few moments' time. Now, I want to ask you right now, what did you notice happened in the room when people were answering? What was happening in you, the listener? What happened in you as you gave an answer? You see, what happens is spiritual. And this is what circles are about. You know, we have come to completely focus on asking questions and actively listening to what's being said, but also actively listening to what is God saying to us by his Spirit. See, there are 5 things that happen when we do this and we practice worship through questions and answers. First of all, it fosters empathy and connection. When you hear someone speak about their personal relationship with Jesus Christ, it creates a deep sense of empathy. In other words, I get to feel what you're feeling. It creates a sense of connection. It allows that into me see to happen. It allows the listener to see into the heart of the speaker. And you know what? Through that creates a bond between those that are in that conversation that transcends just words being spoken. It is deeply spiritual. The second thing is it inspires us to reflect. Listening to other people's experiences with Jesus can prompt me to reflect on my own faith journey. It inspires me to consider how Jesus plays a role in my life. It challenges me to deepen my relationship with him. It strengthens faith. When I witness faith being talked about and experiences being shared, it absolutely inspires and reinforces, what are my beliefs about that? Yeah, that's what I believe. And there's a reinforcing that takes place. It can be a powerful reminder to us of the presence of Jesus in our daily lives when, let's face it, it's so easy to forget about him being present with us. And we're only often looking for his presence when we have a problem. But this cultivates that sense in which God is with me. Emmanuel, God is with me. It cultivates gratitude. I mean, how many of us felt a whole new level of gratitude when we were giving answers and listening to responses that were given? As we share personal stories, Jesus reminds us of his grace. He reveals to us the transformation that can take place in a person's life. It reminds us of his divine intervention in our lives, that maybe I'm going through a challenge right now, and when I've heard that I've heard today from somebody about who Jesus is, it just reminds me of, he can be that to me right now, because that's who I need him to be right now in my current situation. It cultivates humility. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, wow, my eyes are now off me. They're on him. I'm now thinking not about myself. I'm thinking about him. I'm thinking about others. And then the final thing is it encourages openness and vulnerability. As people share those deeply personal experiences, there's a sense in which we have a greater understanding of one another, and we give greater permissions for other questions to be asked and answers to be shared. There are whole levels of relationship that we can move to when we cultivate questions and answers and use them as worship. Jesus demonstrated it for us. Jesus showed us through that interaction with Peter how questions and answers, how engaging in those conversations actually start to unlock more of his kingdom. I want us to go to a final interaction, and the reason why I'm maybe having a bit shorter of a conversation today is because I'm going to give you now 5 questions that you can either answer all 5 of them, you may not have time, or you can pick one. And I'm asking you these questions to, once again, equip us and train us to have times of worship by asking these kinds of questions. And you can take these questions and take them into other environments too, okay? So here are the questions. Question 1, what role does Jesus Christ play in your daily life and decision making? What we're trying to understand from this question is, how does your faith influence your everyday actions and choices? This is a great question, especially when people come to ask us about our faith. And actually, it's not just a religious subscription. It's actually a daily reality. It affects everything that we do. Well, how does it affect everything that we do? Answering this question can actually really equip us to go out into our sphere and to share the very practical ways in which Jesus has an impactful role in our daily life and decision making. Question 2, can you share a moment or experience where you felt particularly close to Jesus? You know, the reason why I think this question is really powerful is, again, because what separates Christianity from any other belief system is the personal relationship that we have with our Creator, the personal and intimate relationship that we have. And when we can share actual experiences where we have evidence, for want of a better term, for that relationship, that is truly powerful. Again, we're called to be witnesses, not defendants, not there to argue for God. We're there as witnesses. Therefore, sharing moments or experiences where we felt close to Jesus is powerful. Question 3, how has your understanding of Jesus Christ evolved over time? The reason why I think this is powerful is because, again, it encourages those that are in our circle or those that we speak to, that everybody is on a journey, and some people have had a longer relationship with Jesus than others, and it inspires others to lean into Jesus more, but it also encourages us to realize, hey, do you know what? This is a journey, and there will be many questions that you'll have, and that's okay. Fourthly, what aspects of Jesus' teachings resonate with you most and why? Do you know, I love this. This might be a great question, just to throw this out there, for you to give somebody as a project each week to come and share in your circle. Hey, this week I want you to come and share which aspect of Jesus' teaching impacted you or resonated with you and why. Again, this is about equipping. We're not here to just consume. We're here to produce, to be trained and equipped as ministers. I'm not just the only minister here. We're all ministers. So let's use our circle time as equipping time. Okay, so then the final question, in what ways do you see Jesus Christ's presence in the world around you? Okay, this is about recognizing, hey, do you know what? The kingdom of heaven is bigger than the church. Jesus is Lord, and we can see his lordship. We can see his influence in so many different ways and so many different areas. And again, this helps us to stay aware of asking that question, oh God, what are you up to? Where do I see Jesus' presence in the world? And so what a great question to ask. So, hey, listen, we're going to kind of bring our broadcast to an end right now, and I'm going to leave you with those 5 questions. And if you haven't already, I'd love for you to maybe take time to receive communion on the back of this. At the end of the day, this is about worship, and questions and answers open up just that appetite and hunger and that desire to attribute all of the glory that comes from the answers that we give to him. Wow, what a rich conversation you're about to have as you choose one or more of those questions. I really am excited to hear how this is going to create more momentum in our circles, in our church, how it's going to equip you to go into your sphere armed with a testimony, armed with things that you can share, but also, more importantly, armed with questions. Become the best asker of questions. Become interested in people. Wow, Jesus died for the people that we are around every single day. Let us not forget that. Let us show them the attention and focus that Jesus showed Simon Peter. There can be intimate moments where God's presence is experienced, even by those who don't recognize God for who he is right now. So I am going to pray, and then I'm going to let you get on with answering these questions. Father, I thank you for our time together today. I thank you, Jesus, for your example, for leading us and guiding us into how we can unlock the relationship that we have with you, which unlocks who we are, why we're alive, what we're capable of, where we're heading. Father, it reveals to us whose we are and the fact that we are your children, that we are your called ones. You have called us for such a time as this. You've given us an assignment. And I really pray that as we enter into this time of worship, of answering these questions, Father, do something that just blows our mind. Do something that just enriches our community. Do something that reveals more of who you are to us. And Father, I pray that you'll increase our desire to share that with the world. Father, I thank you because you are at work. And we thank you. You've called us to encourage one another with the gifts that you've given to us, with the experiences that we have had, with the journey that we are on with you. And we want to use that to encourage. Father, we thank you and we honor you in Jesus' name. Amen. Listen, remember today and every day, you are a champion and there's more inside of you than you think. Until next time, take care.
that conversation, Gareth. That was great. We want to make sure that we're getting engaged with that content. Make sure you take this conversation into your week. Grab a coffee with someone. Maybe look at those questions again. Get into it with your circle. However you can, get in that conversation again in the week. Just mull it over, work through each part. It's great to continue to work on all of those things as we become healthy disciples. So remember that next week we do not have a broadcast. We're having Social Sunday, so make sure you go and find some community. But why don't you, as part of your worship today, go and take communion, maybe with someone who's with you, or even by yourself. Grab some bread and juice to take communion, to thank Jesus for what he has done for you. And also, as part of our worship, you can give financially today. You can head over to our website, everydaychampions.tv/give, where all the information you need there to give regularly or as a one-off. But as part of your worship, take communion, have some time to just reflect on what Jesus has done and to give financially as well today. Well, it's been a great broadcast. Thank you for joining with us, and we want you to remember that today and every day you are a champion and there is more in you than you think.